child, that your skin can bring you so much pain. Now I hear you say, you got the best of both ways. Won't you come and take a walk in my shoes and tell me if you take my place?
This weekend's guest is fresh off a new PB of 2:22.56 for 10th place at the Tokyo Marathon. She finished as the top Australian at the 2024 Paris Olympic Marathon. She's a Commonwealth Games gold medalist and has moved herself up to third fastest Australian of all time. Welcome back to the Inside Running Podcast, Jess Stenson.
Thanks, Brady. Looking forward to having a chat.
Feels like we've been here before, Jess.
Yeah, we've had a few race recaps in over the years.
Yeah, Daegu, I was just thinking about that today, and it was Farmer Sam, wasn't it, on that trip with you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Can't remember much else from the conversation, but I can mention him.
He was pretty dirty about it, actually.
Okay. Yeah. So, but you and Adam did go over a bit earlier, didn't you? And you go to Chiba?
Yeah, we did. So that was part of the arrangement was they wanted us to fly in on the Tuesday, so we got in quite late that night to catch a lift to Chiba, which was about 90 minutes out of sort of the CBD or the area where we were going to be staying in Tokyo.
Oh, so was that all elite athletes? Like they flew you into Tokyo, then got you out of the city?
Yeah. So it was a bit of a kind of pre-race camp opportunity to just relax, and we met lots of people. So, yeah, there was quite a big contingent there.
I saw the photos, and I just assumed that long-time listeners might know. Actually, we probably never spoke about it on our podcast, but Australia used to always send a team over to the Chiba Ekiden relays.
Yeah, and I was there in 2010, and I had so many, like the Pat Carrolls, Mona, even Nipper, LZ, people messaging me saying like, oh, that's where I stayed, and go to the Bark Chip Loop, and just kind of reminiscing about Chiba.
Yeah, well, I just thought you'd had good memories, so you and Adam decided maybe you'd go there individually to kind of do that last week of, or not even a week, half a week of training before the race, but it was a race organised thing.
Yeah, well, it was so funny because we got it. I'd obviously seen where we were staying online, but I didn't connect that it was where I'd been in 2010. It was so long ago, but I also thought a lot of places would look quite similar. So we got in at, 9 p.m. or something, and the organisers were chatting to us, and they said, have you ever been here before? And I said, my first trip to Japan was for the Chiba Ekiden Relay in 2010, and they're like, oh, you stayed here. I was like, oh my, is this it? And I got so excited because I remembered loving the little sort of wooden log cabins back then, and sure enough, I walked into a very similar room this time. So, yeah, it was a bit of a blast from the past.
Outside like a championship, is that the only time you've done that, like for a marathon major or like a city marathon where they've got you all in the one spot 3 or 4 days out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with London Marathon, I stayed in Teddington. Like that was just my own arrangement. And then we all went into the race hotel probably on the Friday before the Sunday race. And then New York, again, I was staying with a cousin in DC and then made my own way to the race hotel on the Thursday. So, yeah, I'm not sure why they offer this, but it was brilliant because it was just a few days of zen and then heading into the sort of chaos of city life. And Adam and I both said afterwards we were grateful we didn't arrive into Tokyo on the Tuesday or Wednesday, because you'd either be in your hotel room or you'd be wanting to get out and about, and you go into the little cafes and it's very congested. You're sort of sitting shoulder to shoulder with other people, and I think it's just higher risk for either overdoing it or catching a cold or something.
Also not great running around. Like you got the palace and that's about it in Tokyo, don't you?
Yeah, so the only run I did other than the race in Tokyo was the 30-minute easy jog on Saturday around Yoyogi Park, and they actually asked us to be down at the lobby by 6 a.m. For that run. I think they just wanted us to all get it done early before the crowds flocked to Yoyogi Park.
Yeah, and the Japanese are very organised too, aren't they? So like they've looked after you, this is where you are, these are the times, the dates, and make it run as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, you could tell they were getting a bit stressed out when people weren't as punctual as they were, and they were so apologetic on that day because I think we left 7 minutes late. Adam and I, we've got nothing to do like for the rest of the day. We're all good.
Yeah. Hey, the decision to do Tokyo. So, like, obviously the Olympic result, which was amazing, the great half marathon at Melbourne, and then you had to withdraw from Valencia. But that wasn't long ago, December through to end of start of March kind of race.
Yeah, so going into Melbourne, I'd done the City Bay. I don't know how long after the Olympics that was, maybe six or 8 weeks. And going into Melbourne, I knew I was carrying something. I was a bit apprehensive. I really wanted to make the most of that race opportunity. The half marathon is an event that I hadn't mastered, and something wasn't quite right with my right side, and I knew it might be something that could result in me not being able to train properly for Valencia. But just wanted to line up for this race, and sure enough, the week after. So I'd not run much at all leading into Melbourne, thinking I'll just have a really good taper and also let whatever's going on recover. And I found out shortly afterwards that it was a bony injury, and so had to make the decision not to go to Valencia. And within a week of making that decision, I was looking at what other options might be out there. I wasn't sure whether March would be cutting it too fine, but we always figured, look, if we've got a race target there and it's not working, we can push that out. And so my agent, Derek, presented a couple of different options. Osaka was one of them, but that was a week earlier. I wanted every week I could have. Nagoya wasn't really one of the options that he presented, but I mean, Tokyo, if I was able to get a spot, I was pretty keen to go there because it's one of those races that has been on my to-do list, and another major. So that's when we made that decision, and just had to make sure I recovered properly and hope for a smooth 8-week marathon build.
So are you saying like a stress reaction or like fracture? Like did you run
It
on
wasn't,
that?
there was no cortical breach. It was like a periosteal reaction. And it was in my tibia bone, but the pain I was feeling leading into the race, I think the main concern on the morning of Melbourne half was in my opposite, like plantar fascia, because actually it was more of my tib post tendon. I think I'd been running a bit differently without realising, and so it just felt like the wheels were sort of starting to fall off everywhere. But during the race I had so much adrenaline, I didn't feel much. It wasn't until the day afterwards, and I look back now and I don't regret doing that race. It was an experience that I think has really helped me to go to another level and gave me the confidence that I can run under 70 minutes for a half marathon. So, Valencia didn't work out, unfortunately, but I thought the Tokyo opportunity was a great one anyway.
Yeah, okay. So had a niggle, and then you got Izzy Bat-Doyle one side of you and Leanne Pompiani on the other side, trying to throw down a big kick finish.
Oh, by that stage I couldn't feel my body, so it didn't matter.
It's good to know. Hey, let's go to the Tokyo race though. So you're on the start line, and I read your little Instagram post, and it said there was a bit of hustle and bustle. Everyone's in there pretty tight. Like, surely they look after the elite field, give you a bit of space.
Nah, it was crazy actually, and it was one of those race starts where you couldn't hear the ready set. You couldn't hear anything. It was just suddenly a bang, and I think the elites and the sub-elites must have all been crammed in together because it was chaos. I think Adam said he saw me, 400 metres down. I was like way back in the pack. So it was really hard to keep my feet. The only time I've experienced that before to that extent was the Paris Olympics. That was crazy at the beginning too. Like generally you sort of want to keep your arms in, but you actually had to have your elbows out to protect your space or you'd get knocked over.
Yeah, okay. Do you ever feel unsafe in those situations as well? Like we've seen it, was it Valencia 10K maybe a couple of years ago when a lot of people did go down? Like you've seen that footage?
I haven't, but the only time I've gone down on a start line was the Gold Coast half in 2022. And it's a really scary feeling. Like that day, the momentum, someone sort of helped to scoop me up and I kept going. But I have a feeling going down on Sunday, you might have been down for a while.
Yeah, that would have hurt. The technical meeting in the days leading in, did you know what pace the paces were going?
Not until that meeting. So the meeting was at 3 on Saturday, so the day before the race, and yeah, there was a lot of chat, and sort of then got to the moment where they spoke about the pacing groups. And look, I had a feeling that'd all be very quick, and they were. I think I said somewhere I sort of was debating whether or not to go with the third pack, the slowest. It was actually the fourth pack. So I've got the pacing chart here. The first women's pack was that's the men's 308 to 309 pace, and that was for a what does that say? Like a 212 finish. So that would have been a course record. The course record was just under 216. The second pack was 311 to 312 pace. And then the third pace group was 314 to 315, and I think that's for a 216 finish. And then the fourth and final pace group was 320s per K for a 220-40 finish.
Yeah, so given the finishing times, no one just go with those first two packs?
I haven't looked at the splits, but I did hear that the winner, just each 5K got slower. So she just went hard and then progressively sort of slowed after. Adam said she was in a fair bit of trouble coming into the finishing area. So, it was an interesting decision. I mean, going over to this race, I certainly wasn't thinking that's the pace that I would target. In training, marathon pace or marathon effort had been around that like 322 to 323, and to be honest, like some of my longer fartleks, the average was more like 325. And I would say those paces were coming a fair bit easier in the lead up to Paris. And even Daegu, like I probably felt like my feel in training was comparable to my feel in Daegu. But I had to keep reminding myself that this was a short build-up, so I probably wasn't going to start feeling good and comfortable at those paces until only a couple of weeks before the race. And also it was hot. And so Adam and I had a meeting after that technical meeting and sort of said, look, there are two options. I can go at that sort of 322-ish pace on my own and hope that I have people around me, but I knew that the Japanese style of racing is typically go out really hard and then it's who can sort of slow down the least. So I thought even if there are some sub-elite men going out at that pace, like how long will they maintain that pace for? The ones who want to finish in a faster time are probably going hard and then coming back. And then the other option Adam said was like if the 320 pace feels comfortable or if you feel in control, you can just go with that group and we can see how long you can hold on for. And I sort of left that chat feeling just a little bit nervous that I didn't really have, I wasn't sure which way I wanted to go with it. And as I was sort of getting ready to head to bed, Dylan called me and we had this really good FaceTime. We hadn't had much of a chance to chat about it in the days leading up because the kids had been demanding his attention and they were both asleep, and he was just sort of saying to me, like, I think the fitness is all just coming together now. And he's like, you've been training in the heat of summer, and he's like, I think you can do it. And just hearing his words, I was like, well, he doesn't want me to hurt myself or embarrass myself out there. Like if he thinks I can do it, like, why not? And I just went to, in fact, Dylan even said to me, you'll probably find that 320 pace, he said, I think you'll find 320 pace will feel like it will feel like marathon effort for you. I think it'll be more comfortable than you're expecting. He's like, I might be wrong, but that's just my thinking. And so anyway, went to bed that night thinking I'll still wait until the gun fires to work out what I'm going to do. And on race morning, as soon as the gun fired and there was carnage and chaos, I saw one of the Kenyan runners in the distance with bib number 31, and I knew that was the pace, one of the paces. And I just beelined for him, and I was like, nah, that's it. I'm this is my group, this is what I'm doing today. And it felt good. Like I did feel like that was an appropriate marathon effort at the time. I sort of said to him, I was like, you're the pacer. And he looked at me and he said, yes, like you in this group. And I don't like the pace. It wasn't for me, but I gave him a big thumbs up. He's like, oh, good. I didn't know where to be.
I'm your girl. Next 35K, you and me.
Yeah. And then the other Kenyan male who had a pacing bib on came over as well. So it was just me and those two. And I knew there was a Japanese male as well. And it wasn't until probably around the 5K mark that I saw him come up with one of the Japanese girls. And she's the only girl I saw for the entire race.
And you had no idea how many were in front of you at this stage?
Oh, I thought there would be a lot. Like I could see some thick packs ahead.
Yeah. Hey, take us back to the technical meeting, because a lot of our listeners will never get to sit in a technical meeting. I've been in a few myself, and they're quite a different experience. Can you describe the vibe, the atmosphere in those rooms?
So yeah, it's all of the athletes, and so we'd had heaps of athletes obviously in Chiba, and it wasn't until we got into that room that I realised about 15 of them were pacers. So they were all lined up with these pacing bibs behind their chairs. I was like, oh, I thought they were all competitors. And so there was a person who came up the front and spoke, and then a translator. So it was quite a long meeting, because you've got them speaking in Japanese and then the translator giving it in English, and everyone's sort of antsy. And at that point we hadn't poured our bottles or got any of those things organised. So it was pretty tense in the room.
Yeah, I was going to say tense. And you've got this, like, you were 15th seed in the race. So people might be listening going, well, how come Jess couldn't choose what pace she wanted to go? Like, you've got these big managers who then almost have conversations with themselves to decide what the pace is. And you and Adam wouldn't have had any input in that, would you?
No. My assumption is the reason they had 3 male pacers for 320s is because there would have been some Japanese girls wanting that. And they're up against the women in Nagoya next week, who that's their World Championships trial. So these girls would have been wanting to post a competitive time, I think, because there might still be a discretionary spot or something for World Champs. So, yeah, I look back and I think so the girls chose to go with the Japanese pacer. There were these other two that I was sort of running with. Could they have potentially slowed down to sort of 321, 322? But I assume they were getting paid to hit 320s on the dot. So I don't think I could have had a conversation with them once I realised I was the only female in their little group. There were a lot of sub-elite men around us as well, but I assume they were probably paid to go through halfway, kind of bang on.
Yeah, they're just getting paid on whatever their tracker splits are coming out
at.
Which is always hard, isn't it? Like, I know, because I've worked with your manager Derek before at Sydney, and he's almost like, go this pace, but if the girls make a call during the race and want it faster or slower, you've got to respond to them almost. Yeah,
okay. See, I probably should have found out the situation and how it works with them. But anyway, one of the things that was making me nervous before the race was because it was a bit of a shorter prep. I hadn't done many sort of 2.5 hour long runs, and I was happy with my aerobic fitness, but that kind of mental endurance I was a little bit worried about. You know how when you've been injured and you go and do your first run, a 30-minute run feels almost like an hour-long run. It's like your perception of time is different, and I've been finding long runs, it feels like I'm out there for a long time. And I felt like in this race, if I was on my own, there was a risk that mental fatigue would really kick in and I'd get in my head a bit too much. I just wanted to be in a pack of people with distractions. And, I think that idea of sort of looking at your watch stressed me out as well, because some of my best races have been when I haven't looked at my watch. I think Toronto in 2018 was an example of that, and then Perth when I had Clarkey there helping out as well, I just didn't look at any splits. So I decided that's what I was going to do again on Sunday. And in hindsight, I probably should have checked a few splits because I slowed down quite significantly after 30 Ks, and I had no idea I was slowing down. Because I was passing people, I was getting positive reinforcement. So I just felt like I'd maintained my pace. And when Adam showed me my splits, I was like, whoa, I fell off a cliff after 30K and I had no idea it was happening.
Yeah, probably past 200 sub-elite Japanese guys though.
I was having a great time, just feeling like I was moving all right. But I mean, my calves did start to grab a bit, maybe sometime around the 35K mark. It wasn't to the point where I thought I wasn't going to finish, but I think potentially that impacted my stride length, and that's why I maybe slowed down without realising I was slowing down so much, because I felt okay aerobically, but I've got a feeling my power in each step was reducing. I actually, out of interest, looked at Garmin last night, and that is true. After sort of 35 Ks, my stride length and everything shortened. So I think I need to just work on my calf endurance and strength a bit more, which I'm hoping just that marathon block I can keep layering on that to build up that element.
So let me get this straight. You've kind of put yourself with these three paces early in the race, like around that 3:20 pace, and then not looked at any splits.
I did accidentally. I saw 30 Ks by accident. I kind of...
Did that mean anything to you though? 1:40.16. You're good at maths, 30K into a marathon?
So Adam had said to me that 15 Ks, 50 minutes was exactly 3:20s. So when I've seen the clock, I was a little bit annoyed that I saw it, because I couldn't help but know that meant 3:20s. And that was, that was exciting, because I was like, far out. Like I'm onto a big PB here. But it probably didn't reflect the fact that we'd gone out fast and then had progressively sort of slowed to that point. So that wasn't an even 3:20s. I think it was probably 3:18s and slowing. So it kind of misled me a little bit. But no, it was an awesome experience. It's something that rattled me a little bit early on, and I should have known it was coming. So you put your bottles in on race morning. So between 6 and 6:30, you could submit your bottles. And I had the black tube Morton bottles, and I'd attach my gels with like a green and gold tape. But when you're putting them in the box, so I was on table 2, Adam actually made note of it. He's like, oh, someone else has a black Morton bottle the same as yours on table 2. I was like, oh, okay, this could be interesting, because I was obviously submitting mine after that person, so that athlete wouldn't have known there was another person with the black Morton bottles. But we got to the 20K box, and that person also had a caffeinated gel on their bottle, which was the same as me. So I thought if they at least get that bottle mixed up, we've got the same gels on our bottles. Sure enough, get to the 5K station and it was all good. 10K, my bottle wasn't there. So I grabbed this other black bottle, hoping that because it was a Morton bottle, it would have Morton in it. They use the concentrated one. I always have a dilute bottle at 10K and have one of the big 40-gram gels. So there was no gel attached. So I just drank this concentrated Morton drink, feeling a bit nervous, because obviously with drug testing and everything, you have to trust that the athlete hasn't put anything in there that shouldn't be in there, which you'd hope not. But I grabbed my backup gel down my top, which was just a caffeinated gel. And just knowing it was caffeine, I thought, is this going to muck my guts up having an extra caffeine gel? Got to 15K, my bottle wasn't there again. I was like, far out. Is this going to happen all race? Had their bottle again. And then at 20K, both of our bottles were there. For the rest of the race, both of our bottles were there. So I don't know if it was my dilute Morton that threw that athlete's race plan, but somewhere between 15 and 20, something went wrong. And so luckily my bottles were there for the rest of the race. But, a few little things like that just distract you as well around the the marks where you cross the mat and see the clock. So it had kind of been easy not to check my splits with that going on early. And then, 30K, I spotted the clock.
And even because they would have big clocks out there, but the crowds would be massive on the streets of Tokyo, wouldn't they? They wouldn't stand out as much as they would at a smaller kind of tier marathon.
Yeah, so the crowds were awesome. There were people out cheering, not as raucous as the New York Marathon crowd, but there were still a few funny signs and things. Lots of Aussies out there cheering, so Australians in Japan, either probably working or just on ski holidays. And then because there was a couple of hairpin bends, you also had the rest of the field yelling at you. So there were so many runners actually cheering, which was really cool. I think I heard the first sort of cheer at 15K where I could tell that person was an Aussie. And then that happened quite a bit throughout the race after that.
So the information at 30K is you're pretty much on 3:20 pace, which is just over 2:20 finishing time. Then when you get to the final straight, in your head, are you expecting to see a 2:20, a 2:21? You've slowed a tiny bit maybe. Is it going to be a 2:24? Did you have any idea what time you were coming in at?
So Adam was cheering for me somewhere around the 40K mark, and I could just tell by his cheers that it wasn't anything off the charts. I think if I was running a 2:20 or a 2:21 or something, he would have been yelling that at me. So I wasn't sure. I was like, I must have slowed down a bit. And I'd just been kind of, after 30K, focusing on the race because I did have the Japanese woman up ahead, and I was really determined to try and catch her. And I don't think I passed her until just before 40. And then there were a couple of sub-elite men I had my sights set on. And so then when I saw the clock for the first time, it was 2:22:35, and I still had quite a long way to run, and it was on the cobbles. And I made a bit of a mistake. They sort of funneled you you came around a left turn, and I ran wide with the men and was following them towards the men's finish line. I didn't know there was a different sort of finishing area for the women. So the officials were guiding me back towards the left. And I think that's when I saw the clock and was just like, I might not get under 23. So I just, sort of tried to kick home as much as I could.
Well, you've been there before as well, haven't you? With the just add a minute and just missing 2:23 high last time.
I've peppered a whole number so much throughout my career. I think it was London 2017, I was 2:27:01, and then Toronto, I was 2:25:59. So I don't know what it is about those whole numbers, but when you also think you've got a time, and then the net versus the chip time's different. But fortunately, it said I was far enough under that I thought I would get under the 23.
And what were initial thoughts then? Because was it because everyone's been talking Jess Stenson goes to a flat marathon, were you happy with the 65-second PB? So I'm assuming you've got to be happy but not content, I guess.
Yeah, look, I could have chosen not to take that bold approach, but I feel like I needed this. I've never run a marathon where I've sort of been out of my comfort zone like that, and I think I had to get rid of that fear factor, and I'm really not scared of it now. Adam, he came up to me straight after the race and he sort of said, good job. He's like, you needed that. And I was like, yeah, I feel like I did too. I've been buzzing since because I feel like I've done something that's helped me to maybe progress a bit more as an athlete, because the reason I was so nervous about going with that pacing group was I just didn't know what that pain might feel, or whether the wheels would completely fall off in the later stages. So to have finished it knowing it didn't feel too bad, I've felt worse in marathons before. I'm not scared of trying something again, but maybe just dialing it back a little bit. So next time, I think I'd have the courage to look at my splits too and not be scared. So I think my initial reaction was because I'd had that feedback at 30K that I was onto a huge PB, I was like, I don't know how to feel about this, but I pretty quickly settled on feeling really happy that I'd had that experience. And I look at, I think Sinead in 2022 Nagoya Marathon, I think had one of those experiences of just sort of going for it. And, she's our greatest marathon runner. And and Izzy had a crack at Valencia last year. I don't think it's a bad thing to experience, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was in our message group as it was happening. I was pretty much saying that your halfway split, 70.08, would be the fastest halfway split ever from a female marathoner in Australia, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, Tokyo's course is conducive to a positive split, because you start the first 8Ks or so are gradually downhill. It made pacing a little bit challenging, because if you're a little bit up on time, you sort of got to take that because you are rolling down. And then from probably 25Ks onwards, you've just got these little like rolling ups and downs. So I'd say the course is definitely easier in the first half. There aren't that many marathons that sort of have the net downhill in the first half, perhaps.
Yeah, I've just looked up while we're talking. You were quicker than the Australian record through 25K as well. 1:23.25 for Benita. That was when she ran Chicago.
Yeah, okay.
You could be on here, Jess. You could be an Australian record holder. Something in your contract about breaking Australian records? This could be, not sure how net downhill that first 25K is, but you could be on here. You just missed the 30K Australian record by 4 seconds.
Oh, wow.
She was 1:40.12 at Chicago the same day, October 2006. There we go. So, yeah, the point is that you didn't muck around that first 25, 30K.
Yeah, and I think it was around 35 where I started paying the consequences, probably just in like my calves feeling tight, which I haven't felt that in a marathon before with my calves. I've had sort of quad cramping before, but for whatever reason this time it was my calves, and I put that down to probably the hot pace early, and then perhaps just a bit of lack of conditioning in that area following a lower limb injury.
Yeah, and is that what you meant when your post said I learnt so much from the challenge?
What I meant is that I learnt that it's not a pace to be so scared of anymore. In training, I really, as I said, all of my longer fartleks, they sort of would come out at around that 3:25 average, and I've always thought, okay, well, that's the sort of pace I should be aiming for in the marathon then. But it just made me realise that when you're carb loaded, fresh, you've had your taper, you can do a bit more than what you perhaps think based on your training.
Yeah, and the heat. There's got to be a lot of people listening who have just trained through a hot summer. Maybe they got marathons in March, April, and they're getting a bit worried about what their pace is going to be because how it's felt in training. But it's a completely different ballpark. Plus, once it cools down a bit.
Yeah, and when I was listening to Zatopek, Avish did a presentation from an exercise physiologist's perspective about heat versus altitude, and heat training can bring about similar physiological effects. And so you kind of see it as a bit of a free heat training camp that can elevate your fitness as well. So it's not just that your perceived effort is a bit skewed, but you're actually potentially, getting a bit of like an altitude hit.
Yeah, good to think about that as well. Hey, can we share some training? I know best behind the scenes, Croaks doesn't like that you only put up the good stuff on Strava. He's like, Jess will upload the race, but we'll never get to see her key workouts. So, and I get it as well, like kind of keeping it a bit behind closed doors. Yeah,
I mean, for me, Strava, it's not something I have to do. Like Adam, he monitors my training because through Garmin, like it automatically uploads and he gets a notification, so he can see my sessions that way. And then I have a spreadsheet that I update that sort of shows the numbers and my efforts. And there's certainly nothing in my partnership contracts about having to, share anything on Strava. So I just see it as something that's an extra distraction, or like takes away from, time doing other things, and can also add unnecessary stress. It's just something that you might worry about. And so I do share the odd thing on there if I think it's an interesting map in a new location or a relevant sort of key marathon session or long run, because there is a sort of a big Strava community, and I still like to be engaged a bit, but it's certainly not something I really put much thought or effort into. So I shared the race results straight away because I think, that's something people might be interested in. But sorry, Croaks, I don't think I'll ever fully go on Strava. It's just another stress.
It keeps people like Croaks away from giving their opinion on your training as well. You're opening up the door for every one of your followers to put in their 2 bobs worth, which I actually don't think is healthy at all.
Yeah, and I think there can then be preconceived ideas that could add pressure. I love the fact that I went into this race feeling no pressure. It was like nothing to... Actually, Sarah Hall put up a quote that I really like: nothing to lose, nothing to prove. And I really felt that going into this race. The only pressure was internal pressure, because so many people had helped out for me to be there for that week in Japan, and even to get the training done, like from Dylan to family members, Adam taking time out to come over. So I wanted to do something sort of noteworthy, because they'd all put so much effort in and they cared about the result too. But anyway, so Strava training, what do you like to know?
We did start talking about 10-week averages going into the race on our weekly show. So we had Izzy's data up. I think she was 155k a week for 10 weeks. No, she wasn't. 169, and then she did 155k leading into taper week. And Leanne was 187 for her 10 week, and then 140 first week of her taper. So what were your kind of numbers you were pushing?
So, yeah, I sort of started building back in December, and so I guess the numbers were a little bit lower at the beginning of the block, but my 10-week average was 149, and my biggest week was 171, and that was... so the week before the race was 128. Race week would have been, 100 or something. Yep. And then, so that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so it was about 6 weeks before the race.
Yeah, so quite lower than those ladies. But what were some of your key workouts? Like,
yes.
Do you have the same stuff every time around, or does Adam like to mix it up?
He mixes it up a bit, in that it's got to fit in with the unique sort of timing or situation of that race. We managed to get most of the key marathon sessions in that I like to do. One of them being, which I've talked about heaps, that 21k fartlek, and that's one that I did with Max Stevens and a few from Team Tempo around the Botanic Loop, and I think it came out at like a 325 average or something. I was pretty happy with that because I really felt in control that session. Like, it wasn't an all-out effort. The session that Adam was really happy with was it was a long run. I think I ran for like 70 minutes and then went into 3x2k and then finished with a 5k. And the 2ks would have been just under 325s, might have got down to like 321 for one of the Ks there. And then the 5k ended up probably sitting around the 321 mark, and then finished with like a 313 last K or something. And Lockie Scott helped me, and Adam was really pumped after. He's like, I'm so like that was a really good session, but I was actually really deflated after it because I pulled up terribly that day. I had a huge headache and just felt really lethargic, and I don't know what was going on, if I was a bit unwell. But yeah, I didn't take a lot of confidence from that because it had really knocked me about.
Yeah. So how long did you run for before you started the faster stuff?
70 minutes. I think it was like a 35k run or something all up.
Hills as well.
I'm happy to put it up on
don't
put it up.
Give us all the
I honestly don't care about sharing things on Strava, but yeah, I think it was a solid session, obviously, but because I pulled up or didn't feel in control, that didn't sort of fuel my confidence. But one of the other sessions I love is 5K, 4K, 3K, 2K, 1K, and that was Billy's first day of school. I did that one, and I just kind of started out on my own and just got in the zone, and the last K sort of was felt strong. So I did like that session as well. But the thing I probably lacked going into this race was those big long run sessions. Most of the bigger sessions were between sort of 15 and 18 Ks.
Yeah. That's a big workout with the emotional stress of your, eldest child starting school.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that session in the race. One of the mental strategies I used in that Melbourne half was to actually just imagine myself doing that particular session with like a float 1K in between, because it works out to be 20 Ks. So in the race on Sunday, I was remembering back to that first 5K rep where I was just processing the fact that, Billy had been really sad at drop off, and I don't know, it was a good session just to clear my head, because I was pretty upset that day.
Yeah, it's impressive that you can knock it over and kind of move the mental stress over and get the splits hit. Jess, we got a whole lot of Patreon questions here. Do you mind if I start firing some of these at you? Because some of them we would have already answered, thanks to all our Patreon community who wrote in. But I'm going to start with Claire's question here. Huge congrats on your race result, Jess. Just wondering if you're still incorporating cross-training into your marathon build-up.
Yeah, actually, that is something I didn't mention when I gave my sort of weekly averages. I was doing 1 to 2 ellipticals per week as well. Throughout that whole block. So only generally 30 minutes, and I have like a commercial elliptical where I can just set it to hills, and the resistance just fluctuates throughout. So I don't typically do a session, but it's not just a straight resistance for the whole session. I'd say most of them are kind of a 6 out of 10, maybe even 5 out of 10 effort.
Yep. This one's from Elise. What a run, Jess. So stoked for you. Loved how gutsy you were with the pace group. I'd expect no less. If you could have dictated the pace the group went through halfway, what would have you chosen to maximise your fitness and preparation coming into the race?
Probably 71.
Yeah, 71 flat.
Yeah, I reckon. I think if I were to go and race again, that's sort of about where I'd want to land, and then try to kick home in the second half.
Yeah, which is much easier said after the race.
Yeah.
But in the technical meeting the day before, if you were the boss, 71 flat, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. That's where Adam, when we had our meeting, was like, it's not ideal, but this is what we've got to work with. And I think we, as I said, came away happy with the decision we made and what came of it.
Yep, this one's from Peter. Does your position on the list of all-time Aussie marathoners feel important to you, or does the joy come from the fast time and the high finish at major races? Incredible run. Congratulations.
Yeah, look, I think probably, I don't know if it's something from coming from a background of team sports or whatever, but I love those moments when you do have a team and you're trying to place or position high up in the race. The list, it's obviously nice, but it doesn't bring that same kind of, the happiness and memories that high up placing does. Certainly, PBs give me a really big buzz as well, because you just feel like you're chipping away at your own potential and exploring your limits.
Yeah. What about there's one here from Nadia. Super run as always, Jess. Are you going to change up anything for the next marathon build? In brackets, she's got Valencia after reflecting on this course. Are you going back to Valencia? Is that the plan for later in the year? World champs? Got the qualifier?
I mean, I wanted to try and secure that qualifier so that I'd have options, and even if you can run a faster time, you can potentially get invited to the bigger races. I was heading to Valencia last year, just a pay your own way over, kind of find a hotel sort of setup. So I hope that, I might not have to sort of force myself into a race like that. I might be able to just have a few different options and weigh them up now. It's too soon to be able to feel one way or the other at the moment. But in terms of my prep, I wouldn't change too much other than potentially some altitude training. I feel like altitude training gives me just an extra level of strength, and I think just more consistency. It was obviously a bit of a disrupted last few months of last year, so I think just more consistent weeks of what I've been doing will help, and then that race itself should help to elevate my fitness as well.
Yeah. So the Olympic result and now the quicker PB's got to help opening doors in the future.
I hope so.
Which is crazy to think that you had problems getting into major races.
Well, I think Valencia is unique because they really want runners who are sort of targeting records, like world records and that sort of thing. And because that's 209, something in the mid 220s doesn't really stack up. So I think they sort of honour runners who have been in their race before, and it's certainly one that I'd love to do one day.
Yeah. Melissa asks, it seems like you never have bad races. To what do you attribute your ability to consistently perform and keep improving? Is it the years of consistency, careful coaching, mental approach, all of the above? None of the above.
I think Adam's coaching is just so integral to that. He knows me so well now. We've been working together since 2008, and just he knows when I'm ready, and if he thought I wasn't going to be ready for a race, we wouldn't do it. Like, he knows my priorities and that sort of long-term health focus, and so he gets my training right. And then I think the years and years of running and dealing with some pretty challenging race situations that I've been able to get through, that helps me to have a toolbox of mental strategies that I can pull out when I need them. Like, there were times on Sunday when I had sort of some mental strategies planned for particular points, and I was like, nah, this isn't doing it for me. And so I had to go to something else, and having that experience, I think, really helps. Can you share what they are?
Yeah. What works, what doesn't?
They're funny little things. Yeah, so I remember Paula Radcliffe in her book talked about counting to 100 over and over again. I started counting at one point, and I was like, nah, this isn't doing it for me. And then, because like opportunity had just been a word I'd picked, and I had a few things written down in my hand, I started just going through and like, and I was thinking of as many words I could think of that started with O, and I was just literally going through. I was trying just to completely kind of numb my mind from what I was out there doing, and that wasn't doing it for me either. Even what I'd done in Melbourne Half, where I kind of pictured the 5K, 4K, 3K session, wasn't working. So I ended up going back to my first marathon in Nagoya in 2012 and like visualizing as much of that race as I could. And then I went to my next marathon and did the same thing. That strategy, I had to a couple of times take my attention away to go and grab a bottle, or I sort of looked into the crowd, but that pretty much got me through 20 Ks of the race, going through every marathon and visualizing as many points from that marathon as I could. So I think my strategies are very visual. I was also picturing my family back at home, because I knew that Dylan I found out since he had a lot of trouble getting the stream. He ended up getting
it was so bad.
Yeah.
It was like non-existent for most of us.
Well, he paid for Flow Track and that didn't work, so then he had to do something else. He got it eventually, but anyway, I knew that they were planning to watch, my whole family, and then my sister was tuning in with my niece from Orroroo, and so visualising them at home helped me to just, I don't know, there are times in the race when you feel pretty overwhelmed about the fact that you've still got 20, 15, however many Ks to go, and I find it's good just to take myself to another place in those moments where I can feel myself starting to feel that anxiety and like sense of being overwhelmed.
It is a good, the first time I've heard that one, think about your past marathons and different points. If you've had good past marathons, probably wouldn't be a good strategy for me, Jess, but you run well in every one of your past marathons, so you build the confidence.
Well, what I really liked is I could go straight back to like 15 Ks in the Daegu Marathon, and I remember I was feeling on stretch, or 21 Ks into that race, I remember I was getting really strained breathing. So it was really validating to know that I ran a PB that day and I was feeling better in Tokyo at points than I had in that particular race. And even Perth, which I think was one of my best races, I remember at 24 Ks thinking, nah, this is really tough. So it just, it's empowering to know that you've felt worse at certain points in other races and you were able to finish. So,
yeah, spot on. I'll go 3 more, I reckon, Jess. Yuki asks, congrats, Jess. Would love to hear your thoughts on Japanese running culture compared to Australia and Europe.
I loved it. There was something really zen about Chiba and going into Tokyo and just seeing so many people celebrating running, and everyone was just so polite. It was a real kind of communal feeling. It wasn't just everyone for themselves. I felt like people were all out to look after each other, and I really liked that. And the organisers really just were so out there to help us and to make sure we had a really good experience, and just, so warm and friendly with every question you had, and every time you had to meet for a particular engagement, you just felt like you were in good hands.
Last one from our Patreon supporter, Damien. I was lucky enough to also do Tokyo on Sunday. How did Jess find the temperature? As an Aussie, it seemed pretty good, but I saw a lot of people online saying it was too hot for a good time. Curious how a pro like Jess found it.
Certainly when we were looking at the forecast, I was initially expecting it would be, I don't know, like a low of 4 to 8. And when the low was, I think they were predicting 13, I was getting a little bit nervous about that because I didn't know how exposed parts of the course were. So I certainly made the call not to wear arm warmers or gloves, just sort of warmed up in those. And throughout the race, I never felt cold, but I never felt hot. So I didn't feel like, there was a point where, I was feeling the heat out there. There were a couple of times the sun shone on me, but it didn't last for too long. I think it would have been more the runners who were out there later with that direct sun. It could have been pretty uncomfortable.
Got hot pretty quick. Got warm. Moose doesn't like us saying it got hot because he ran a marathon at Doha when it actually was really hot. But hot for marathon running. Hey, final one for me, Jess. The hype in, I guess, Australian and worldwide distance running at the moment. Like, it seems like every week some big record goes down. You've got your turn this week, but potentially if big times go down in Nagoya, this is going to be old news pretty quick. Like, how does it feel? How does it feel being one of the athletes in the arena, and how quick everything's moving at the moment?
It's pretty cool because we're all, I guess, inspiring each other to really push the limits. And I too think some big times will go down in Nagoya this weekend, and it's good because it challenges you to raise the bar again. I mean, Sinead set such a high bar for us in Valencia in 2021, and I think that's the reason why Australian marathon running's gone to another level, because that's the standard now. And the American girls, I think their record's around like 2:18, and I think that'll be in people's sights as well in the very near future. But I think when you spoke before about all-time lists, that's where I don't think it's helpful to focus too much on those, because they're only temporary. Like, they'll be rewritten over and over again. So if you can draw a lot of your satisfaction from other things, it's not too disheartening when you get bumped down a few a few notches.
Don't put in your Instagram bio yet. People are going to move around the next couple of years. From a racing point of view as well, like, you've done the flat fast one now, like, do you go, I want to do way more of that? Or like, hey, get me a championship style, get me some hills in here where I can kind of show my strength. Like, how does your mindset around the courses now, I suppose?
Yeah, I think there's a time and place for both. Like, it's those hot championship style races take a lot out of you. And So I think by changing it up and then shooting for a cooler, flatter one, it's just good for your body to have that variety. I think trying to smack a fast one a couple or to a few times a year would potentially be harmful too. So, yeah, I like the variety. And I certainly think the footwear having changed since, 2020 has changed the game a lot too. I kind of look at my career before the footwear advancements as being a different one almost to the last 5 years.
Yeah. And Jess, did you get to read a book while you were over there? What's on the bedside table? You know, I like finishing with this question. What's happened?
So on the way over, I watched a documentary. This is with Qantas that I was engrossed in. It was called My Generation, and it just went through baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and all of the influences on those generations. It was like an American narrative and was anywhere from like politics to music. So that wasn't a book, but that was a cool doco on the way over. On the way back, I listened to an audio book. It's a Sally Hepworth. It was Darling Girls. And it was amazing. Like that got me through the 9 hours on the long haul flight. But then I think there was probably half an hour left to go when we landed. So I'm still waiting to hear the the punchline.
Well, you just sit there and close your eyes and listen to like 7 hours, 8 hours of audiobook.
Yeah. So, that was a pretty relaxing day, I guess you could say, but I was operating on very little sleep from the night before, so it was nice.
Yes, all quads and calves and all that as well, and then you'd get home and be straight into mum mode, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm still waiting to have a good sleep, but hopefully soon.
Yeah. Awesome, Jess. Well, thanks for your time again for the Inside Run podcast. It's always fun hearing your recaps, and I know our listeners always enjoy when you jump on the mic.
Thanks, Brady. It's been a fun chat. It was fun to reminisce.
Yeah, we feel an hour pretty easy, Jess.
Yeah, sorry, everyone.
No, don't ever be sorry. Everyone will enjoy that.
Thanks for all of the questions. They were good.
And I'm gonna hold my head up high. I was taught as a young man, doesn't matter if you're white or black. Just show love to everyone you meet, doesn't matter if it don't come